Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something I think so many of us feel, just being completely overwhelmed at work. That feeling like you're always behind.
Yeah, it's almost universal, isn't it?
It really is. And the material we're looking at today offers a fascinating angle on this. We're digging into optimizing cognitive performance at work, specifically some insights from Amy Brann's article, Stop Overloading the Wrong Part of Your Brain at Work.
Right. And our goal for you listening in isn't about finding, another productivity hack or a different planner.
Please, no more apps.
Exactly. The mission here is really to understand the why behind that fatigue. It's about the neuroscience, the limits of a specific, really important part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, or PFC.
Okay.
And then, crucially, figuring out how we can leverage the whole brain, not just that one overworked part. It means redesigning our work environment, our systems, more than just tweaking individual habits.
I like that framing already.
Yeah.
Because the core idea here, it sort of flips the usual advice on its head, doesn't it?
It really does.
The sources basically say, you're not actually running out of time. You're running out of cognitive bandwidth.
That's the absolute crux of it. It's energy management, brain energy, not just clock management. We've somehow built this whole culture of work, assuming that intense focus is, infinitely sustainable.
Which it clearly isn't.
Not biologically, no.
Okay, let's jump into section 1 then. The PFC problem. We've all been there, right? You use all the tools, the lists, the techniques, but by mid-afternoon, you just hit a wall. Mentally spent. Why? What's happening in the brain?
So that feeling of exhaustion, it's largely centered in your prefrontal cortex, the PFC. Think of it as the brain's executive control center.
The CEO.
Yeah, good analogy. It handles the really demanding stuff. Focusing, planning ahead, making complex decisions, stopping yourself from doing something impulsive, all that high-level thinking. When you're really concentrating, the PFC is working hard.
Makes sense.
But here's the critical thing the source highlights, and where our work systems often go wrong. The PFC has major biological limits. It uses a ton of energy, glucose, oxygen. It gets tired really quickly.
So it's like a sprinter, not a marathon runner.
Exactly. It's designed for intense bursts, not for running flat out all day long. So if your job demands constant context switching, back-to-back complex meetings, zero downtime, you're basically asking a sprinter to run a marathon every single day.
And eventually, it just collapses, metaphorically speaking.
It does. You're depleting its resources faster than they can replenish. So that feeling of burnout isn't necessarily a personal failing, a lack of willpower. Often it's a predictable outcome of a poorly designed system.
A system failure, not an individual one.
Precisely. Think about the constant pings, the notifications, the expectation of immediate replies. It all triggers the PFC, keeps it constantly on. If the work environment doesn't actively protect that finite resource, yeah, you get what feels like burnout, but it's really neurological overload.
So willpower alone isn't the answer. We need to change the environment.
That's the core insight. Biology usually wins over willpower in the long run.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into section 2, cognitive variety. If we can't just keep hammering the PFC, the solution must be, using other parts of the brain more effectively.
Exactly right. We need to leverage the whole brain. The sources talk about these other powerful networks that often get underutilized, especially in typical corporate environments. They manage things like creativity, insight, and seeing the bigger picture.
And these other networks need, downtime?
Basically, yes. Or at least a different kind of mental activity. A pause from that intense PFC focus allows them to kick in. The first big one is the default mode network, the DMN.
Okay, default mode network. What does that do?
The DMN is fascinating. It's involved in integrating memories, making connections between different ideas, accessing creativity, and generating those aha moments. It synthesizes information when your PFC deliberately takes a backseat.
Like when you get an idea in the shower.
That's a classic DMN example. Or when you're walking or doing something routine, it needs that space away from constant, focused external tasks.
And modern work actively fights against that, doesn't it? The source mentions calendars packed solid, meeting after meeting.
Yeah, it's almost perfectly designed to suppress the DMN. If you race from one meeting straight into the next, then jump right into email, you're just in constant reactive mode.
Throughput over insight.
Beautifully put. You never give your brain the quiet moment it needs to actually process and connect the dots from meeting A before you plunge into meeting B. We end up valuing speed over wisdom, essentially.
Okay, so DMN is one. What's the other key underused network?
The salience network. This one acts like your brain's relevance detector. It helps you filter information, notice what's truly important versus what just feels urgent, and pick up on emotional nuances.
So it helps distinguish the signal from the noise.
Exactly. But think about environments that reward speed above all else. Reacting fast, showing certainty, fighting fires.
That sounds familiar.
Right. In those cultures, leaders often bypass the salience network. Instead of pausing to let it assess the real context, the underlying importance, maybe the emotional dimension of a problem, they just jump to the quickest, most automatic response.
So we train ourselves to be reactive, and we sideline the part of the brain that helps with perspective and strategic thinking.
We do. We push those task-focused networks really hard, but the ones needed for deeper reflection, for relational intelligence, they get neglected.
And the consequence of constantly relying just on the PFC, the sources say, is this neural bottleneck, tunnel vision, getting easily irritated.
Yeah, those are classic symptoms. When the PFC is overloaded, its efficiency plummets. You lose that ability to regulate your emotions, your planning gets fuzzy, you become much more reactive. It's not just annoying, it damages performance.
So the only fix is to intentionally bring in that cognitive variety, engage those other networks.
That's the path to sustainable performance, yes.
All right, let's shift gears then. Section 3, tactical solutions. Moving from understanding the problem to actually doing something about it. The first idea is really interesting. Not a time audit, but a cognitive audit. How does that work in practice?
It's a really powerful reframe. Instead of just tracking how long you worked on something, you track the kind of thinking it demanded.
Okay, like what?
For a few days, maybe just jot down notes. Was this task requiring deep, focused concentration? That's heavy PFC work. Was it surface scanning, like clearing emails or Slack? Was it constant switching between different things? Or was it emotionally challenging, like resolving a conflict?
And then you look for patterns.
Exactly. Ask yourself, when did my thinking feel clearest, sharpest? What conditions helped that? And critically, what kind of work left me feeling disproportionately drained, even if it didn't take much time? This shows you where the cognitive load is heaviest, not just the time load.
That distinction is crucial because it highlights the cost of things like interruptions, doesn't it? The source mentions attention residue.
Yes, that's a huge hidden cost. When you switch tasks, especially abruptly, part of your attention stays stuck on the previous task. This residue can apparently eat up to 40% of your productive time.
40%, that's massive.
It's staggering. And it's not just the lost time, it's the added cognitive strain. It makes everything feel harder. And this effect is amplified by what's called the affective network, the subconscious, emotional part of the brain.
How does that play in?
Well, when your PFC is tired, you default to easier, more habitual, often emotionally driven behaviors. That's when you find yourself mindlessly scrolling social media or checking email again, not because it's important, but because the tired brain seeks comfort or a quick dopamine hit.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. The cognitive audit helps you become aware of this so you can consciously reserve that high-cost PFC energy for the stuff that really matters, instead of letting the affective network drive you towards draining, low-value activities.
Okay, I can see how the audit helps individually. But then there's the cultural piece. Recovery. If everyone around you rewards instant responsiveness, how do you actually build in recovery time? It feels like suggesting people slack off.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the source is really clear. This has to be driven by leadership modeling. It's not enough to just say, breaks were okay. Leaders need to make recovery visible, normal, even celebrated.
Blocking time in calendars.
Yes, but strategically. Embed short buffers, maybe 10, 15 minutes right after intense meetings. Don't just call it buffer, label it synthesis time or PFC recovery. Make it sound essential, because it is.
Okay.
Leaders should visibly block out this kind of decompression space in their own public calendars, maybe even champion meeting-free periods, like a half-day rotation. The point is, if the people at the COP don't actively demonstrate that it's okay, even necessary to pause and recharge, nobody else will feel they have permission.
So it's about reframing recovery not as not working, but as essential work for better work.
Precisely. It's system maintenance for your most critical asset, your team's cognitive capacity.
All right, section 4. Let's talk about making decisions when the pressure is on. Stress makes us reactive, right? The emotional brain takes over. The source mentions a salient switch technique. How do we flip that switch?
Yeah, under pressure, that fast emotional affective network tends to hijack things from the slower, more analytical salience network. The switch is about consciously interrupting that hijack and re-engaging the salience network.
How? What's the actual exercise?
It needs to be immediate and, ideally, involve a physical change. Step away from your screen, stand up, walk to the window, change your physical perspective even slightly. That helps create a little distance from the immediate stressor.
Breaking the pattern.
Exactly. Then you need a deliberate reframing question, something like, okay, pause. What crucial signal might I be missing because I'm too deep in this? Or maybe, if I had to explain the core issue here to someone completely uninvolved, what would I say?
That forces you to simplify and identify the essence. It pulls the PFC back in to analyze and hopefully engages the salience network to assess true importance.
That's the goal. You're trying to shift from pure emotional reaction to considered relevance. The source also suggests things like quickly sketching the problem or using a metaphor, anything nonlinear that gets you out of that reactive data processing rut and helps access context and nuance.
It's about creating perspective under fire.
Which is fundamental to good leadership, right? Not just reacting faster, but seeing clearer.
Absolutely. Now let's broaden this to the team level. Cognitive overload isn't just individual. It's often baked into how teams work together. How can we design smarter team rhythms?
A big one is tackling the messiness of meetings. We tend to cram too many different cognitive modes into one session. The advice here is simple but powerful. Clearly label your meeting.
What kind of labels?
Define the primary cognitive goal. Is this a focus meeting where the main goal is analysis and making a specific decision? Is it a reflect meeting aimed at learning, feedback, or brainstorming? Or is it a connect meeting focused on team building, alignment, and relationship?
And you stick to that mode.
Yes. Don't try to make a major decision and do a deep team reflection and build rapport all in the same hour. It's cognitively chaotic. Mixing modes means you dilute the effectiveness of all of them.
That makes a lot of sense. What about smaller, more frequent adjustments?
The source suggests the 30-30 system for focused work blocks. It's simple. Work deeply for 30 minutes, then take literally 30 seconds to jot down the key takeaway or the very next step.
30 seconds, that's tiny.
It is, but it serves a purpose. It helps encode the information, gives the PFC a sense of closure on that chunk of work, and acts as a micro-recovery moment before diving back in. It prevents that mental fatigue from building up quite so fast.
Interesting. And for bigger picture thinking.
Implement a regular, team-wide, no new input block, maybe an hour or two each week, where the explicit rule is no checking email, no Slack, no taking in new information. The focus is purely on synthesizing existing information, connecting ideas, planning ahead, protecting that DMN time collectively.
Love that. Okay, final section, section 5, strategic simplification. This tackles the constant noise, the endless emails, platforms, updates, initiatives that just dilute everyone's focus.
Yeah, the organizational clutter. This is where leaders need to think about reducing the load for their teams. It's about strategic reduction.
How do you start?
Run an input audit for your team. Seriously, map it out. How many different platforms are people expected to monitor daily? How many communication channels? How many dashboards? Just visualizing the sheer volume of required attention switching can be eye-opening. It highlights the hidden cognitive tax of the system itself.
And then what? Just cut down on tools.
That might be part of it. But the more strategic move, according to the source, is to change how new things are introduced. Insist that any new internal initiative, policy, or project explicitly estimates its mental bandwidth requirements.
Wow. So quantify the cognitive cost.
Exactly. How much focused attention will this require from people each week? How many new decisions will they need to make? How much learning or practice time is involved? Forcing this calculation makes the hidden cost visible before you launch something new.
That shifts the conversation entirely. It's not just, is this important, but do we actually have the collective cognitive capacity to take this on effectively right now?
Precisely. It introduces accountability for cognitive consumption. And alongside that, leaders need to actively create and protect focus zones linked to the team's core work. Maybe it's strict no meeting mornings for everyone. Maybe Tuesdays are dedicated deep work days for specific functions.
This isn't about being soft.
Not at all. It's about smart structural design. Reducing the noise, simplifying the system, protecting focus. It's how you unlock the high-value thinking and problem-solving you hired people for in the first place. It builds resilience into the organization.
So bring this all together. For the listener feeling that constant pressure, what's the big takeaway?
I think the central theme is incredibly empowering, actually. It's that effective leadership And sustainable performance isn't just about behavior anymore. It's becoming about neurological design.
Designing the work for the brain.
Exactly. The people who thrive won't be the ones who just try to push harder or work longer hours. They'll be the ones who understand the PFC's limits, who intentionally build in variety to engage the DMN and salience network, and who design systems for themselves and their teams that respect the brain's need for recovery and clarity.
It's a fundamental shift from relying on individual willpower to focusing on intelligent environmental design.
It really is.
So perhaps a final thought to leave our listeners with.
Maybe this. If organizations genuinely want sharper thinking, more innovation, and truly resilient teams, maybe the most important question isn't who's the next star we should hire. Maybe it's what kind of cognitive conditions are we creating or failing to create for the brilliant people we already have.